which is not what God had intended at all. In 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 4, then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. And they said to him, behold, you have grown old, and your sons do not walk in our ways. Now appoint a king for us to judge us like all the nations. But the thing was displeasing in the sight of Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, listen to the voice of the people in regard to all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. Like all the deeds which they have done since the day that I brought them up from Egypt, even to this day, in that they have forsaken me and served other gods. And so they are doing to you also. Now then, listen to their voice, however. You shall solemnly warn them and tell them of the procedure of the king who will reign over them. So Samuel spoke all the words of the Lord to the people who asked of him a king. And he said, this will be the procedure of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and place them for himself in his chariots among his horsemen, and they will run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and of 50s, and some to do his plowing and to reap his harvest and to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will also take your daughters for perfumers and cooks and bakers, and he'll take. He'll take the best of your fields and your vineyards and your olive groves and give them to his servants, and he'll take 1/10 of your seed and of your vineyards and give to you his officers and to his servants. And he will also take your male servants and your female servants and your best young men and your donkeys and use them for his work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks. You yourselves will become his servants. Then you will cry out in that day. You will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord will not answer you in that day. Second Samuel chapter 2. You see where we're going with this. This is very important to go through these scriptures. You can't just jump into Kings if you really want to know Kings. Second Samuel chapter 2, verses 1 through 2. At this moment, David becomes king over Judah. And then it came about afterwards that David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, go up. So David said, where shall I go up? And he said, to Hebron. Now Hebron, remember, is over here in the Negev. It's a very special place, has a lot of roots. Hebron is where Abraham liked to dwell. It's right there where, I'm going to zoom in on it there. Right here where this little W is, that's Hebron. It's right there in the Negev. Jerusalem's up here. So David went up to Hebron, and his 2 wives, also Ahinoam the Jezreelite, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. So here David goes up to become king of Judah. Now let's turn to 2 Samuel chapter 4, or chapter 2, verse 4 through 7. So we're just going to skip down chapter 2, verse 4. And then the men of Judah came out there, and they anointed King David over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul. Because he would inquire who killed Saul, because David had great respect for Saul, because he was the Lord's king, the first king of Israel. And David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead, and said to them, may you be blessed of the Lord, because you have shown this kindness to Saul, your Lord, and have buried him. And now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you. I also will show this goodness to you, because you have done this thing. Now therefore let your hands be strong, and be valiant, for Saul your Lord is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. David loved Saul. David loved these men for burying Saul. David loved Israel. He loved God. He was a compassionate man who considered everyone in relation to him. David was a very relational person. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1 through 5. David was in Hebron for 7 years, and then it became time for him to go up northern to the rest of Israel. And then all the tribes of Israel came to David. So they came to him at Hebron and said, behold, we are your bone and your flesh. Previously, when Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel out and in. And the Lord said to you, you shall shepherd my people Israel, and you shall be a ruler over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them. And he made a covenant with the Lord at Hebron. And then they anointed King David over all of Israel. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. So once again, David in relationship, making covenant with these people. He loved them. He cared about them. He had relationship with God, and he enabled the people to have relationship with God because he remained as one of them. Now at that time, after 7 years, the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites. Now Jerusalem is up here. Does everybody see right there where it says Jerusalem? So you've got the Red Sea or the Dead Sea over here. And this is deep down in a valley. These are mountains. So you have to climb up the mountains if you're down here to get up to Jerusalem. And this used to be called Jebus, or Salem. Sometimes it's referred to in the old ancient times. So that's where you kind of get the name Jerusalem, and it's where you get the name the Jebusites. And there was a mountain up here inside this land. If you look at Jerusalem, you'll see that the hills rise up, and inside there's a mountain right in here. See how this is all kind of a high hilltop right in here? This whole area right in here is Mount Zion.